Today, we're going to objectively unpack what is easily one of the most complex, highly debated, and honestly continually unfolding stories in modern history, the Jeffrey Epstein case. We're going to strip away the noise, rely strictly on established facts, and look at exactly how a single criminal case evolved into this massive global controversy.
I mean, just imagine it for a second. A single individual who somehow manages to weave himself into the very fabric of the global elite. What if one guy literally built direct connections with some of the richest and most powerful people on Earth, all while hiding a profoundly dark reality behind closed doors? It sounds like a movie plot, right?
But it wasn't a movie. For years, Epstein lived a life of truly unimaginable privilege. And his spheres of reach, they were absolutely staggering. We're talking about direct, private lines to US presidents, international business tycoons, massive A-list celebrities, and, yep, even royal figures. He operated behind this velvet rope of private jets and ultra-exclusive social circles, which totally shielded his actions from the rest of the world.
So how does an outsider actually build that illusion of influence? Let's rewind to the very beginning to understand how this carefully constructed facade was put together in the first place. Because Epstein's life was defined by this wild, stark contrast. He was born in Brooklyn back in 1953, and he didn't come from some prominent, wealthy family. No big connections. Yet somehow, he vaults from those modest origins straight into an elite lifestyle. We're talking luxurious properties all over the map, private aircraft, the whole shebang. To the outside world, he was the picture of the self-made financier living the ultimate American dream.
But as we know, the facade eventually cracks. Beneath that highly polished image of financial success, a deeply disturbing reality was quietly beginning to surface.
If you look at the timeline of his life, there's this immense, glaring gap. Decades after his birth, a pivotal moment finally arrives in 2005. That's when the very first police complaint was filed down in Florida involving the grave abuse of a teenage girl. But here's the kicker. It would take another 14 years before his explosive federal arrest in 2019. The space between those two dates, it's just packed with expanding investigations and mounting controversy.
Right after that 2005 complaint, the Florida investigation really ramped up. Detectives start digging, and additional accusers bravely step forward to share these harrowing experiences. The scope of the whole thing expands significantly. But then, the outcome. All of these extremely serious accusations basically culminated in a highly controversial plea agreement. An agreement that critics everywhere slammed as being incredibly unusually lenient, especially considering the severity of exploiting minors. And that surprisingly lenient outcome? It sparked a massive national debate. It raises a critical question that we are honestly still asking today. Did his wealth and his elite connections directly sway the legal system? Was his money a literal shield for him? Or was it just a standard legal decision based entirely on the evidence they had at that specific time? Whatever the answer is, public scrutiny on Epstein was now officially off the charts. Now, for years following that Florida plea deal, the controversy kind of just simmered quietly in the background. Until everything changed and the case came roaring back into the spotlight. Fast forward to 2019, and the world's attention just snaps right back. Federal prosecutors arrest Epstein once again, and this time the investigation promised to actually reveal the full, unvarnished extent of his network. Journalists are digging deeper than ever, survivors are bravely speaking out on a global stage, and the public's demand for absolute accountability hits an absolute fever pitch. But then, right as the world was finally bracing for answers, the entire story short-circuits. On August 10, 2019, Jeffrey Epstein was found dead in his jail cell while awaiting trial. The official ruling? Suicide. And wow, that single event birthed an entirely new layer of complexity. I mean, the sheer suddenness of his death immediately fueled intense public scrutiny. People started questioning standard jail procedures, failing monitoring systems, and massive, glaring lapses in basic security protocols. Even with official investigations taking place, deep uncertainty remained. It transformed what was already a highly controversial criminal case into a truly unprecedented global phenomenon. So all of that unresolved tension brings us directly to one of the most heavily debated topics today. We really need to separate fact from fiction when it comes to the famous Epstein Files. Whenever you hear about this case online or in the news today, you invariably hear about these Epstein Files. But to strip away the internet myth for a second, let's clearly define what they actually are. They are simply a broad collection of court records, depositions, witness statements, and investigative documents. When portions of this stuff became public, I think a lot of people were expecting this dramatic, automatic list of culprits. But what they actually found was a much more complicated reality.
Here is the absolutely crucial point to remember when you're evaluating any of these highly publicized legal records. It's a vitally important journalistic caveat. The simple appearance of a person's name in a document does not automatically imply criminal wrongdoing. People might be mentioned in these files for any number of perfectly benign reasons. Understanding that careful distinction is absolutely essential if we want to objectively evaluate any legal record tied to this case.
So, stepping back from the files for a second, why does this specific story continue to captivate and divide the public so many years later? Why does it still matter so much?
Well, public interest remains so incredibly strong because the case touches on some really fundamental societal pillars. It's evolved way beyond just a single individual. Today, it stands as a stark symbol for much broader issues: unchecked power, the incredible reach of immense affluence, the public's demand for accountability, and honestly, maybe most importantly, our overall trust in public institutions.
It literally forces us as a society to continually ask these difficult, lingering questions. Chief among them, are our legal systems actually equally fair to everyone? It really challenges us to look at our institutions and ask how effectively powerful individuals can truly be investigated. When elite, VIP connections enter the picture, does the scale of justice actually remain balanced?
Look, many facts are now firmly established, and the official investigations into his death have concluded. Yet, major aspects of this story continue to be fiercely debated every single day. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this to chew on. What do you think? Has the full story already been revealed, or do the absolute most important questions still remain totally unanswered? Thanks so much for joining me to unpack this, and as always, keep asking the tough questions.